you created Lucifer, and yet he wound up being what he is. So is there a flaw in you? You know, so I would ask questions like that. So we would all discuss it. Then we would always come back to the thing of, well, about evil. Well, we all have free will, and that's, people choose to do evil, and it's like, well, okay, that's right. But and actually, I want to read uh, out of the book here where I said, when I would bring up these questions with others, the usual response was, it's free will. God gave man free will. Man chooses to do evil. That's true. But it doesn't answer the deeper question: why introduce the knowledge of evil at all? Why plant a tree in the middle of paradise that would bring death and suffering to the world if eaten? And why was evil the choice and not something else? I mean, after all, God didn't build a wall around the tree. He didn't build barriers and lights and saying, don't touch, don't touch. He just put it there and said, don't eat of it. And so the questions would be, what was the purpose of the tree? Why does evil exist? Where did it come from? If God is perfect, how could he create a being like Lucifer who would eventually rebel? Was there a flaw in God? And that alone was terrifying when you think about that. Our creator, if there's a flaw in him, kind of like a computer glitch, everything goes good and all of a sudden glitches, and it's like, oh my gosh, is there a glitch? Did the devil just fall through the cracks because there's a flaw in God? How could a perfect being create something capable of evil unless there was some flaw in the design or in the designer? And if the devil truly rebelled, why didn't God deal with him immediately? And why not eradicate evil before it had the chance to spread? Instead, Satan was allowed to roam the earth, to tempt Eve, and eventually influence humanity and hand over the dominion of the world into his hands. So questions like that would rise. And then when I would have circumstances in family where just extreme pain and heartache would come, I would just go, it's like, God, this is just, it's just nearly unbearable. It's like, why would you create beings or man knowing that some of them are going to turn against you and you will be sending them to this place of, in the abyss? Why would you do that? Knowing, I mean, you created them knowing what they're going to choose and what they're going to do. It just did not make sense. So it got to a point where I began to struggle really heavily, and I began to get over on another side, and I was going like, really, I guess in my spirit I was going like, God, this doesn't make sense, and I don't like this at all. I don't appreciate this. I mean, who you've created man, and then you put us in this environment where it's just full of hellacious things, and yet, thank you, Jesus, for coming and giving us life. Thank you, thank you. But why even have to put us through this? I didn't understand that. So, with all of that rolling around and going, I began to struggle, and I think, well, I even said in the book, I remember whenever you read about Peter, whenever Jesus said that Satan would like to sift you like wheat. And I began to realize that I was being sifted like wheat, and it was just, it was rough. There would be times that I felt so close that God may do away with me, that I would get on my knees and say, God, have mercy on me. I know you're the only true God. I know, please. I mean, it was that bad. There were times I would just get down as low as I could, saying, oh, God, forgive me, but I don't know what to do. So it came to a place where it's like, either I'm going to have to find something out. I'm going to have to get past this because I can't go on with God. It's hard for me to go on with God until I can get some answers. So in the book, I dedicated the book actually to Noreen because of all of the hours that I would sit and say, but Noreen, think about this. But Noreen, what about this? The scripture says this, and yet this is what's going on. And we would go back and forth, the hours that we would go back and forth. And so I dedicated that to Noreen. Noreen, go ahead and speak there. You're on mute.
Unmute. Okay, am I unmuted now? Okay, you can hear me. All right. My background, I came from a Catholic upbringing, and it was submission, submission, submission. And so I didn't have those questions because I had submitted everything no matter what. No matter what came, what happened, God, you're a God. I'm never going to question that. And then I watched Alan, and I'm not talking days, weeks, months. I'm talking years. This took a process of several years of him struggling and struggling with questions to the point I just finally said, God, you got to fix him because he truly has come to this point, and I don't know if it's you. And that was the question: is this you, God? Are you bringing him to this? Are you bringing him to this point? Or is this just the enemy absolutely beating the snot out of him? And how should I stand against this? And how should I pray for him to break through this? It was such a struggle emotionally. It even physically began to just wear on him. So
then I finally realized no man can give me the answers, because there's nothing written in the scriptures really that says, and this is why God did this, and this is why God did that. So it's like, God, I'm going to have to get this from you. And Jesus said, there is none good but God. So when I look at that, I just told the Lord, I said, Lord, I'm going to have to go by what it says, here, and I'm going to have to look through your eyes and through the eyes of scripture, but you're going to have to show me, you're going to have to let me see through your eyes, and not what the world is presenting, and all the evil and pain and hurt and everything that it's presenting to us. So it was shortly after that I had this dream, and it was a dream that opened it all up, that gave me the vein of thoughts and information, that I could follow that vein, and it opened it up. And really, it's all about jealousy. And I realized that no one talks about the jealousy of God, at least that I've heard. I mean, every once in a while you'll hear someone say, but after all, God is a jealous God. It's like, oh yeah, okay, it says that. But what is the part about jealousy? And so where it opened up was in Exodus, whenever God had come to Moses. He told Moses, he said, when I appeared to Abraham, I did not appear to, or I appeared to him as El Shaddai, Almighty God. He said, but when I appeared to you, or whenever God appeared to Moses, he said, I came to you, and I've come to you as Adonai, or Lord. So the difference there. And I thought, okay. But then I began to look at Lord, and it's like, oh my goodness, Lord is the one you pay your allegiance to, the one you serve, the one you worship. He's Lord. So that's the God that came to Moses, and that was the God that said, now you go tell Moses to let my people go. Why? Because I want them to come and worship me. Well, what really popped in my mind the first time was reading through Exodus and looking through the scriptures on jealousy. And I'm sure you're all familiar with this. It says God will visit the iniquities of the fathers to the third, through the children to the third and fourth generations, because God is jealous. I went, what? I never, we've heard that, in deliverance sessions, and saying, okay, this is what happens. All these things come through the family line, things like this. We would connect that. But then when it said, because God is jealous, a jealous God, I went, what on earth? Then I began to look at it in the Amplified Bible, and it says, God is is an impassioned God, full of passion. He's a passionate God um, who is jealous and he's jealous over the things he's created and that rightfully belong to him. And so as I begin to start studying jealousy, I begin to start seeing all of the places where God would call someone back, not because he was going to destroy them, well, he would later, but he was saying, please come back to me. You're committing adultery, you're committing spiritual adultery, and I'm jealous. So I begin to understand that this jealousy is the very thing that we deal with as husbands and wives. If you want to understand some of the jealousy of God, look at your own relationships. I would be jealous over my wife if I begin to see her heart and her affections going elsewhere, and vice versa. And then if it got to a point where there was actual, an affections going somewhere else, I would begin to start getting outraged. And Noreen would get outraged. It's like the very covenant thing that I've made with you. There is jealousy here, and it's the jealousy is what protects a relationship. Love is what binds it together, but it's protected by jealousy. And I begin to realize, oh my goodness, God's kingdom, we're all joined together in love, but guess how he protects it? With his jealousy. And so if he begins to see his people begin to stray and go off, and as in Colossians, Paul talks about the idols, idolatry, the lust of the flesh, the all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And these things are described, the works of the flesh are described as idolatry or idols. And when those things begin to start getting in our lives and our affections go there, God begins to start jealous, and he says, you need to come back. You need to come back. So I say in the book, and I really believe it's true, God's love is what makes God's jealousy holy, and God's jealousy is what makes God's love intensified. So you look at John 3:16, and that completely opened up a whole new vision for me and a whole new understanding. For God so loved the world that he gave. Well, what God did, he was so jealous of what he made, mankind. He's so jealous over that and so protective over it that he's so jealous over that, and he lost it, that he's willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice in love. So once again, I say love is what puts, jealousy is what shows the intensifying actions of God's love. So when he loved the world, it's because he was jealous, and it's like, you're mine and I want you back, and I will pay the ultimate price to get you, because I'm a jealous God, and there's not going to be anything out there that's going to be a God except, I am the only God, and there's no other gods before me. And, I'll pay the ultimate sacrifice to get you back. And that's what he did. It was in such a way that God wanted his people to know, and that's why the first of the 10 commandments is, you shall have no other gods before me. I am a jealous God. That's number one.
Yeah.
And I never thought about that before. You just got the 10 commandments, but that's the number one thing. So I realized God is saying, above all, you guys, you need to realize you're dealing with a jealous God here.
We never added that second part. It was always, that you love God. You serve no other, but we never looked at it. Actually says, because I am a jealous God.
So when I began to look at this in jealousy, I realized that God is jealous love. I know that John said that God is love, Apostle John. Jesus said God is a spirit, but God himself, without the help of an apostle or anybody else, said, I am jealous. I am Adonai. My very name is jealous. So we're dealing with jealous love. is what we're dealing with. Absolutely. So when I saw that, it's like the pieces came together, and I realized that when God does something, he does it in both of those characters, the jealous and the love. He moves and works with that all the time. And that's when it made sense to me why the tree of knowledge of good and evil was in the garden. Because I've got to go back to.
Can I throw this in real quick while you get back into that? As Alan wrote this book, I realized how prevalent it is for this day and this hour, because you hear God is love, God is love, God is love. And we're to move out of that love, and that's true. But he also said, I am a jealous God. And I feel like God is rising up now saying, I'm jealous over my people. And my people have refused to be loyal to me out of love. They think that because they can walk in love, God is love, that they're free to be free thinkers and do whatever it is they want to think and do. And even when it moves into the immorality. But God is love. But if you know God is jealous, that puts a whole different picture in your mind of, I can't just move in my own free will and my own desires without coming face to face with that jealous God.
And so when I began to look at Lucifer, it began to answer. It answered the question for me. It's like, why would you create a being that that knowing that he was going to turn against you and create rebellion and all of this? And why do these things? Is there a flaw in you? That as I was talking about earlier, and I realized it's like, oh no, that was the design. There's no flaw in God. What we see and what we live in and what we understand is the design that God had. So I said, so Lord, what's going on? Well, I realized God intentionally made the angels on purpose with the ability to rebel. And he made Adam and Eve intentionally on purpose with the ability to make decisions, whether they be right or wrong. Now, when I read in Psalms where he talks about God has created all the heavens and they all show his glory, the stars and the plants and everything brings forth his glory, it makes sense. I went, oh my goodness. Everything that God creates, he's jealous. Now, once again, he's jealous love. Everything that God does, there's a jealousy part of that because, like I said, in creation, whoever creates something, the creation or the creator is in the creation. So God has created the things that he's done and he is in his creation. So all of the plants and the flowers and the water and the stars, what do? They show forth his glory, glorify God. They instantly do that because they're made to do that. And God is a jealous God and he loves this creation to reflect himself. God created Lucifer beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, when you read. And he did that on purpose. And Lucifer at one point was reflecting God's glory, like, wow, look what God has given me. Wow, reflection of his glory and how beautiful. But then God, like I said, made him with the ability to rebel. And this is another point. I've got to throw this in here. But I realized that Lucifer could not rebel unless rebellion had existed. So Lucifer didn't come up with it on his own. He didn't create rebellion. Rebellion and the wrong side had to exist, otherwise he couldn't do it. If you read there when you read there in the King James Version, it says he was beautiful in the days until sin was found in him. And that jumped out at me one day. It's like, you can't find something if it doesn't exist. So evil had already existed. The knowledge of evil had already existed. Otherwise, it couldn't be found in him. So I'm going, whoa, all right. So when God created the angels, he expected them to be loyal to him. That was his whole expectation. I'm going to create you free. I'm going to create you with an ability to move about and reflect back to me my glory that I've put in you. And yet, knowing good and evil. Now, I said, and let me say this: if you're thinking in your mind, what do you mean evil already existed? Well, do you remember after Adam and Eve fell in the garden, and God said, um, "Seeing now, um, how there in Genesis it said after Adam and Eve had fallen." Oh, God said this. He said, "Seeing that you have become one of us, knowing good and evil." It's like, what? So this existence and this knowledge of evil had existed all the time. It was already there. So seeing you have become one of us, knowing good and evil. Well, the angels knew of that knowledge. Everybody knew about it except Adam and Eve. They were the newcomers, and they didn't know about it until they ate of the fruit. And when they ate of the fruit, then they became like the rest of every other creature, knowing there was good and evil. Lucifer knew it, but what he did, he began to take on the what God had placed in him. Instead of continually reflecting back to God the glory, he looked at that, and we actually kind of have a term for that in modern day terms. It's "you own it, girl." I mean, have you ever heard that? You know, you own it. In other words, look at you. Look how great you are. You own it, man. Just own it. Own it. The devil began to own it. And when he owned it, that's when he broke ranks and no longer reflected to God. He began to say, "I'll own this, and I will become a God like God. I will become as the Most High God." So that's what happened. But the knowledge of that already existed, and God created those beings simply to be loyal. That's why most of the angels are loyal, but there are some of those who were not loyal, and He did it on purpose. So when I begin to see that, and why did He do that? Because God is jealous. Loyalty, it's loyalty. Loyalty, as I begin to ask God and meditated, I realized loyalty is nothing without a choice. If my wife is loyal to me because she chooses to be loyal, not because she has to. And the thing is, loyalty without a choice is nothing. So it's the choice of loyalty that brings it all together. God is jealous, and He says, "I want loyalty, but I have to see it. Will you be loyal to me if you have another way? Will you be loyal to me if there's another choice? If you have information of something else, will you still be loyal to me?" That's what the tree is all about. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. And that's why God didn't put barriers around the tree and flashing lights and say, "Stay away." He said, "Do you love me? I'm jealous. Will you serve me? Will you be loyal to me because you want to be, or because you don't have a choice, or you don't know of any other, there's not another choice for you to make, so you're loyal to me." So you can see that the fulfillment of loyalty, or actually the fulfillment of jealousy, what fulfills jealousy is the acts of loyalty with a choice. That fulfills it. It's kind of like fire. I see it kind of like this. We know fire exists. Do you see any fire going on anywhere right now? Is there fire going on in your house? We know it exists, but where is it? Well, we know it exists, but fire exists when the laws or the laws that require fire to come forth or to manifest, fuel or broken laws or electric, whatever requires fire to come forth, that's when fire exists. But fire exists anyway, you just don't see it. With God, that's why most Christians are "God is love, God is love, God is love." But once you begin to, or once a Christian begins to move over and their affections go to other gods, then all of a sudden fire appears.
Yeah.
And God says, No, no, you belong to me. And I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm going to love you. I'm going to have mercy on you. I'm going to bring people to talk to you. I'm going to be patient with you. I'm going to show you all these wonderful things. And if you still don't come, then I'll have to bring judgment because I'm jealous and I want you and I want you to be with me.